Welcome back, shot callers. The podcasts will be published in January of 2022, and we want to wish you all a very happy new year. We will continue to bring you the revolutionaries, change makers, and agents of change to help you upgrade your health, your wealth, and your planet. The Wealth Alchemist definition of wealth is living a life determined by you, where you have access, freedom, and resources to pursue your dreams, invest in your health, spend time with loved ones, and enjoy the beauty of this amazing planet. In 2021, we explored on the podcast the topic of functional and cellular medicine with guests like Dr. Elizabeth Yurth from the Boulder Longevity Institute, Dr. Nicola Conlon of New Cheeto, who is, in the same country, maybe down the road, not too far from our next guest, Tobias Reichmuth from Maximum, and Daniel Dietz from Spermidine Life. Today, we will dive into the topic of precision medicine. Precision medicine is a medical model that proposes the customization of healthcare with medical decisions, treatments, practices, or products being tailored to a subgroup of patients instead of a one drug fits all model. It basically looks at a person's genetics, their lifestyle, and their environment to find treatments that work for their situation. It is revolutionary today, although I suspect that our grandchildren will do some face palming when they read about the old clunky way of doing healthcare, which should really be called sick care. Our next guest is a revolutionary, and she is directly contributing to your ability to increase not just lifespan, but health span. Nikolina Lauc, co-founder and CEO of Glycanage, will give the shot caller listeners insight into the tremendous opportunity of precision healthcare for both your health and your wealth. Particularly relevant for my audience is the impact of perimenopause and menopause on the biological age of women. So this is an important topic. Nikolina and I will be discussing in this podcast. Welcome, Nikolina, to the Shot Caller podcast.
Hey, Shannon. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm very excited. You know, something I noticed immediately about you when I was preparing for the podcast is your strong entrepreneurial roots. Your past endeavors vary from frog farming and secondhand clothing exchanges to SaaS services for the vacation rental industry. That is very fascinating to me, and I want to talk and hear your story of where your founder mentality comes from, and maybe a little bit about how that prepared you for launching Glycanage.
Yeah, there's lots of fun stories. It depends into which one you want to go into, but yeah, I started very young, and it's really the only.
You have enough.
Gonna have to cut it off. I don't know how to shut off Siri. She keeps coming on.
Oh. Good question.
Shut up, Siri.
In the top right corner, yeah, I wonder if you can shut her off. Do you think you're talking to her, huh?
Yeah, he keeps coming up. I never use her. So give me a second.
I wonder how you do that.
Okay, let's give it another try.
Yeah. So shall I do the last bit? I'll say, talk to me about where your founder mentality comes from. So tell us about where your founder mentality comes from and how maybe it's prepared you for launching Glycanage.
So I think for me, it really started early on. It's the only thing I've ever done. I've never done anything else. So I say that I probably don't know how to do anything else. But it went from childhood to early teens, uni. I pretty much always had some type of a business, or you can call it a side hustle. So, and then also my family was very entrepreneurial, and I think our grandfather was the first. He had the first computer company in former Yugoslavia. So that was, it wasn't very successful because we had a war, breakdown with Yugoslavia. So that kind of trumped his ambition. And then my father and me pretty much co-founded our first companies at the same time. So I think that, again, he was very encouraging from early teens to whenever you made some money to invest in somewhere or have some type of sustainable vehicle which amplifies it instead of you just spending it. So it was quite a good teaching from childhood.
Wow, I couldn't have had a better answer for this podcast actually, because one of the things I struggle with is getting parents to talk to their teens about investing, and especially talking to the girls. So well done to your father for having that conversation, and clearly that's influenced you. So I love that. That's a great story. Did you have any other early mentors or influencers that you sort of thought, I'd like to be like them later on in life?
And actually, I wouldn't say so. It was really always, well, I think my granddad was a big influence because my parents were very young. So I was technically raised by grandparents, and my grandfather spent the most amount of time with me when I was a child. So I think he was a huge influence, and he had lots of he was incredibly bright. He was a university professor, and he had this really radical ideas about many different things, but he instilled lots of philosophies which were from investing into people instead of assets, materials, or property. And it was then this, all kinds of maybe a bit more radical thinking at the time. So I think all of that kind of rubbed off on me a little bit. First examples for me of people I looked up to, I think definitely my parents, because they were both scientists, and my father's he's had his own companies since he was also quite young, and they're university professors. So and the hours they worked and everything they did to get to where they are, it was just a huge impact seeing that as a child, because that's all they ever did. They just worked, but they loved what they did. So it was different to just work as in, what would you call it? As in, this is not something pleasant to do. I'm actually putting all these hours in because I love what I'm doing. And then first examples for me of people I looked up to came from books. So just entrepreneurs I read about. And I think the first one was Richard Branson. I read his book, and he was very open about being dyslexic, and I'm hugely dyslexic. So I was very encouraged to learn that there's somebody else who, and also I think that there are a lot of dyslexic entrepreneurs, and maybe there is something there that you utilize a different type of skill set. But he was a huge influence reading his early books, and I think any rebellious type of entrepreneur I would be very attracted to. So anybody who didn't really fit the mold, I think I read all of their biographies, and that was really my book mentors.
Your influence. Those are great stories. And I use Richard Branson in my teen stock market class as an example of an entrepreneur who didn't have a runway built for him. He was dyslexic. He didn't come from particularly affluent family, and he built everything, and he did do things maybe a little bit provocatively, a little bit different. So I think he's very inspirational, and look what a big sort of influence it had on you by him sharing the fact that he was dyslexic. That has given probably many other people that confidence and courage to say that might be somewhat of a challenge for me now, but it could work out to be an advantage, or it's just nothing that should stop me. So I love that example.
Because my whole family was academic, so all of them had a doctor's degree or just under it. I never fit that mold. Or my mother's also dyslexic, but her parents really pushed her through schooling in a way that she would get beat if she got bad grades. So she did.
Wow.
She's a dyslexic doctor, and you don't have many of those. But for me, it was very challenging to see all of them excel so well academically, and I wasn't doing quite the same. So when I learned about Richard Branson's, how he really dropped out of school. I think his mom pulled him out when he was very young. It opened my mind in the way that, okay, maybe this is not actually, maybe I can do it this way and
Yeah.
not be constrained to the PhD doctors, and I can still do amazing things. And look at this, he went to space this year, so he's really pushed it far.
We can't fault him. He proved that there are more than many different ways to be successful, and it need not go the academic route. So I fully agree with that. The other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight ahead of time, sort of do a little bit of the backstory, is the fact that you founded Glycanage with your father, and you're the first father-daughter team that I've come across, and I think that is very, very cool. Can you tell us maybe just a little bit of the backstory about how you guys decided two different entrepreneurs coming together to launch this company?
So that was a very long, it took a very long time for me to actually start working with my father. Although both of us were entrepreneurs for forever. He actually, about 11 years ago, so when I was 19, he told me that he can measure aging or biological aging. And for me, I think at the time it felt like a very stupid idea, or something I would never do, because I was 19 and I started my first business, or the first official company, when I was 18. I think I told everybody I was 25. So I was like, no, I don't want anybody to know my true age. So it didn't really connect to me at the time. And then his field of science is also something where he's actually one of the pioneers, and it's glycobiology, or the biology of sugars. So him coming across it was completely accidental, because it wasn't any of these more geoscience or longevity science that was happening. It was really coming from a niche part of biology that most people were overlooking, and seeing the age is the most significant factor or influence. So whenever you look at a certain condition, mainly chronic conditions, you would have to factor in age. You can't look at the 20-year-old with the same condition, same as a 40-year-old with the same condition. You had to really, age was one of the strongest influencers. So aging was always there, and they were not. So I say, because he's also not the best health example, I say he's non-biased, because he can't be biased, which is great in science. You can be objective.
Fantastic. And then you guys just sort of at some point decided, okay, there's something here we can really build a product and a service around.
Well, he thought it could be a product 10 years ago. And I had very different businesses in those 10 years since. He founded the company he registered the company. So he eventually submitted patents and carry on publishing on the topics. But about 2016, they registered the company in the UK with 2 academic friends. And the company just sat there. And the science kept going. The science was doing amazingly, but the company was just there. And then at one point, and he was nudging me then, so this was 2016, he was nudging me, oh, come and do this with me. You're not a bench entrepreneur. Maybe you can help run this. And I was always no. And I was just in the middle of building a business. And he had also a very good pitch where he said, because I was doing something in property at the time, so he said, do you want to be renting flats for the rest of your life? Or do you want to do something that nobody else in the world can be doing right now? Which was a very good pitch. So I thought about it a bit more. And I think then a few years ago, they also hired a professional CEO, and they had a professional CEO for 2 years. And unfortunately, they didn't move any product or sell any product. It was just putting a corporate CEO into a startup. You have to build something from nothing. It's not the same mentality as coming in and you have a company to run. It's a very different mentality. So a lot of mistakes that lots of academics do. So they pay this high salary for 2 years to a professional CEO, and nothing really happened. And then 2 years ago, or just when the pandemic was starting, a couple months before then, I took the CEO and started investing my own money. And over the last 2 years, I invested a quarter of $1 million.
Oh.
other startups in dollars, so a little bit less in pounds.
Yeah.
And we're on a very good track. We're finally a proper startup. We have great momentum, and we sell across 40 different countries.
40.
40, yes.
Wow, fantastic. Okay. So I think this is a good sort of segue into Glycanage, telling the listeners a bit more about it, and how you're kind of approaching aging. As a budding biohacker myself, wink, wink, I turned 50. And of course, that seems to be the magic age where you start to go, I need to take care of my health. I need to, really make sure these next 50 years are as good as possible. And you're looking at the root cause. Well, I suppose the idea is to look at the root cause of aging, and the different people I've interviewed, they kind of tend to come back to some common themes. But there was a BBC article that I read that you had a quote in that I really loved it. And you said, "We are a healthy aging company built over 3 decades of research following 150,000 people. The Glycanage test can measure your rate of aging by looking at the immune system and balance of inflammation or inflammaging." And I thought that was brilliant, because what I have heard is that inflammation is the root of all evil in the body. And so I'm not a scientist, not a doctor, but it's really interesting that you're looking at the science of glycans, the role that they play in the body, and how, you're working with these sort of mastering these molecules. So tell us a little bit about what it is you're looking at and what it is you're trying to solve.
Yeah. To put it simple, we're looking at the immune system, and the immune system creates inflammation. And if it's acute inflammation and you're killing a pathogen or reacting to something you should, that's great. It should be there and that it should be shut off. But as we age, we accumulate this low-grade chronic inflammation, which seems to be sterile, where there's not the apparent pathogen, which is constantly there and going up with age. So that's on a simple note. At the beginning, you spoke about precision medicine. And I think what we're really doing is precision health, but because before you get to the medication, you can still manage your health, and it has to be personalized. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And then you spoke about genetics. And genetics were this first entry into realizing, yes, we're all different and we should be personalizing lots of different, from health to medicine, to match us as individuals. But genetics are actually a very small part of it. And when they estimate the genetic influence on longevity, or how long we live, they say it's about 20% influence. So it's not that big. And if you look at most chronic conditions and most reasons why we die, about only 30% of that is explained by genes. So genes are not everything. They're not the whole picture. You can't do precision medicine or health by just relying on genes. So when we look at glycans, we need to first explain what glycans are. And glycans are sugars. But when you say sugars, people think about the sugars you eat. So they think about glucose, the sugars that give you energy, the sugars that make you fat if you overeat them. That's an entirely different thing. It has nothing to do about it. So you have to, when we say glycans, you have to forget everything you know about sugars. Okay. Glycans are an essential component of your cell, and they're complex carbohydrates. So same as the food we eat and the trees, the things around us are made from carbohydrates. We also have carbohydrates in our biology. And they're in every single cell in the body, and they control how our proteins work. So we wouldn't be complex life forms without the sugars. And DNA creates the proteins. Proteins do most of the work in the cell. So we call them the workforce of the cell. And then we can change our DNA with epigenetics. We have this epigenome that has a big impact on the protein. But then the glycans around the protein change the protein post-translation. So that's beyond your genetic influence. But they also incorporate the genetic and epigenetic influence. So they put together this nature and nurture impact and put it into one single molecule that now we can quantify and measure. And we look at it on antibodies, or on the most prevalent antibody in blood, or 70% of all the antibodies you produce. And then these sugars around the antibody, they activate or suppress inflammation. And as we're getting older, you accumulate more of these bad pro-inflammatory ones and you decline in the good ones. And we look at it now as a general number. So we give you your biological age and we compare it to these. So the 150,000 people we looked at, they're also not just any people. They're people from the best genotype, phenotype biobanks around the world that we can get our hands on. So they're a really good baseline, also spanning both genders and over 30 different ethnicities. So we have a very good baseline to plot you on and say that your glycans should be this old or they're much older compared to other people in your cohort. And that is highly influenced by lifestyle and behavior. And you can't wind it back. So we already know both in research and in practice that there's many ways you can influence it and then slow down this infla-aging clock. And that is there was a recent good comparison study by Edinburgh where they looked at all of this current aging clocks, and they even looked at all of the clinical markers you do at your doctors and then modeled a clock on it, like a phenotypic clock. And the glycans were most predictive of future incidence of disease and hospitalization. So they are very meaningful for your future health. They are an early warning system because they show these early molecular changes, sometimes a decade before you develop a disease. And they can be disease specific. So one way where we're going in the future is not just giving you a report on your biological age, but interpreting all the different structures we're already looking at with different risk and certain diseases. So you know what may happen in the future, but then you can also measure how well you're pushing it forward or rewinding it. And this is not new. This has been in research for like 30 years ago when they looked at glycans. Glycans change a decade before you develop rheumatoid arthritis. We published a paper this year in hypertension where glycans change 7 years before you're pre-hypertensive. So they're a very nice early warning system where you have up to a decade to respond, both lifestyle and maybe some early pharmacology later down the line, where you can prevent disease and prolong your life without relying on this current system we have in hospitals where it's sick care. You come in when a certain organ has failed, and then you're on the drug for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, do you think that this is partly a function, and I say partly because nothing's ever 100% one thing, that the drug companies, it just wasn't incentivized for them to develop, there wasn't the incentivized to look at that. And perhaps as people have become more informed, access to information via the internet and I would say social media to a certain extent, because all of a sudden you can now compare yourself and your way of living and your fitness a lot easier through these channels. Do you think that that's one reason why they just sort of ignored this, or the health industry ignored this? Or?
Yes, there's lack of financial incentive. And generally, if you look at prevention as a whole within the healthcare system, it's 5% of global budgets. And even if you look at research budgets for early diagnostics, it's 5% of all the money spent on research. And even if you look at cancer,
Shocking.
we know that we can prevent, or the best outcome is if you detect it early, and 5% of all the cancer funding goes on prevention. Why? Because the expensive drugs, which prolong the patient's life for maybe 3 months or half a year, are a lot, they can sell them for a couple $100,000 instead of prevention, which is cheap and sometimes so it's much better value for money. So we're hoping government healthcare will eventually have to go in this direction because everything is falling apart at the moment. But a lot of it is then based on lifestyle. And that's something your doctor can't do. You can't prescribe a drug to change somebody's lifestyle. Your doctor is not going to go on the run for you. He's not going to cook for your food. There's so many other factors that come into healthcare which are not part of it right now.
Yes.
And are not measured in any way or personalized to you as well. But there's so many complexities to it. Yes.
For sure, we have to be accountable for ourselves 100%. That there's no question about it. And this is just something I'm fascinated by. I just genuinely want people to be healthier and live longer. And there are some really simple things that we can do immediately to improve our health. And yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But it's interesting that 5% of these budgets on average are only going for prevention. But I can kind of see there may be a shift, because as you start to see these age pyramids get dramatic, especially in Europe and in China, other places around the world as well, the healthcare companies and the insurance companies, I can almost envision healthcare companies saying, you need to take a glycanage test before we're going to insure you, or maybe we'll insure you to 80% of what you want, but you are a high risk for cardiovascular disease. So we need to look at this. I mean, that brings us into another territory of, invasive data, but could you envision that happening?
Yeah, there's a very big ethics conflict here. And yes, lots of insurance companies want to talk with us. And we even have a pilot with a few, and I can't name them now, but they're not giving you a negative effect for you. Like they're giving this as a perk, same as they give the Apple Watch or they give something else. So it's a perk to keep their customers more loyal, but they're not going to change your premium or anything based on your reports, because that's not ethical. It's same as same as looking at a genetic report and then changing somebody's policy based on their. It's not ethical. So I think it's good in a way where they're inspiring positive behavioral change. And I think Vitality is doing a fantastic job with this, and lots of other more modern insurances. But a lot of them are still stuck in this maybe a little bit outdated view, and I don't think their consumers will go with it. I think this really needs very good ethics before it gets to end consumers.
Yes, I think that will have to be discussed and educated around, because I think people might be hesitant. Having said that, I think it's super important. The earlier you can discover more about yourself from the inside before it becomes a problem, it just seems to me the right way to go. When did you bring out your first minimally viable product?
Okay, so that's so I did my first test in I think 2015 or 2016, and we've had scientists we've been testing for 6 years, 7 years, maybe even a bit more for some. So for very long, it has been available as a research product. Then I think 2017, they had the first commercial version, but you had to go into a hospital, draw blood, then they had to separate the plasma for us and ship this on dry ice to a lab. And all of these logistical heavy steps really put the price up to something that was a bit too high. It was about £600 to do a single test when you added everything in. And we didn't yet know how you can change it. So you would get this biological age score, and well, we did already have some early research, so we could have given some advice, but we didn't add this in as a service, and we didn't have as much research as we have now. So you would get maybe a high score, which you paid a lot of money for, and we couldn't tell you what you can do about it. So it wasn't the most friendly product. It was
the most elegant solution at that point.
Yes, and I think the scientists, they thought, oh my God, this is this brilliant test that we developed with this amazing data set and this new science, and everybody's just going to love it and everybody's going to go for it. But I don't think consumers buy the biological age. I think they want to control their aging, or they want an action plan on what to do about, or they want feedback that what they're doing is actually working. So it's not actually. So it there's a whole other component of this product that we had to develop for it to be a viable commercial product, and obviously put the price down. And we have now, and you have a box for you, which is very simple to do. You can do it at home. You don't need a nurse, and it's not a lot of blood, so everybody most people can do it, and our clients go from 20 to 92. So if they can do it, then I think it's a pretty broad spectrum.
And it's worth it, right? We're going to I'm going to trial this on this podcast. So I'm excited. We'll do that at the end. I follow your father on Twitter, and he had made a post that said that you were currently analyzing, although this might be a bit outdated, 30,000 glycomes per year with visibility towards 1 million. What does that mean exactly? And what's the biggest hurdle to get to 1 million?
So you don't have a lot of, so high throughput glycomics lab, high throughput means you can analyze a lot of samples at the same time at a more cost effective price. And you only really have 2 labs who do high throughput glycomics in the world. One is my father's, and he's the largest one. And the second largest is Leiden University, which are 10 times smaller than us. So
wow.
He's a pioneer in this field. He analyzed the first largest human glycome cohort, which I think was 6,000 or 10,000 people in 2008. And they did the first genome-wide association papers with the human glycome. So they're really pioneers in this space. And our capacity now is actually about 100,000 per year based on all the machines we have in the lab. But we haven't hired the staff to do that type of throughput because we still need to build the demand for this testing, because nobody really knows about it. Even if you're in a room full of scientists, and there was a glycan scientist from Stanford that was talking about it. She was in a room with the best scientists in the world, including Nobel Prize winners. They wouldn't know really about glycan, so they will have a very limited knowledge, and they couldn't answer some basic questions. So it's a field that hasn't been popularized. It's a part of our biology that has forever been here, and we will never understand life, longevity, any disease without looking at it. But everybody is ignoring it because it was very hard to do. The structure, like when we look at the glycome, you can't sequence it like the genome. They're brand structures, so they're very complex to analyze. So it's very hard to do this, and most people do what's easy.
Wow!
So they started a long time ago. Yes, yeah, and they got us this far. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well done to your dad. Well done to you guys for sort of creating this whole new sector within healthcare that can positively impact our health. I'm very excited to see what you guys go on to do, because I'm very sure that you have a lot of things in the back burner, probably. But it also sounds a little bit like your background, not being a scientist, is adding some depth to the decision making and looking at the consumer experience, and not just looking at this from a scientific perspective. And you have too many scientists together, they sort of, I would say, all drinking the same Kool-Aid, right? And so
yeah, you have a great science
different flavor of Kool-Aid, so that you're actually achieving your goals. And so I can see how you fit in there, and why it's important to have a non-scientific person in the team. For the benefit of the listeners, can you tell us at the moment what is a test of your kind of premier test cost at the moment?
So we bundle every test with a consultation, and they're not mandatory, but you get a lot of value from them because they help interpret your results and then give you an action plan as well. And it's delivered by doctors. They're usually NHS GPs with a British lifestyle medicine education or nutritional degree as well. So they can go a little bit beyond what your usual doctor would be able to help with. So we bundle both of those because it is something, and I think because it's very new, you do need a little bit of, and when a doctor tells you to do certain things, you go and do it. You try, you follow it more than if just an app tells you should be doing something. Maybe with use, you don't need as much hand-holding, but everything comes with a doctor's advice. So one test is 289 pounds. And we also, and that's one test and the consultation that gives you an action plan. And then we also do a package of 2 where the price is 15% less or around that, where 2 tests is 492, and you have an intervention plan and then a follow-up at the end of it with another test and another consultation.
I was going to ask you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's expensive for us also at the moment because the samples are, we used to do plasma, now we do these dry blood stains. You do with you can collect them on a filter paper in the box. So we analyze each of them 3 times, and when you get your age score, whenever you see a change, it's a real biological change. It's an error margin. Our error margin is less than 1 year. And now we even have advanced temperature control, because if it goes up above 60 degrees, so Dubai, Australia, you have a little bit of influence on heat. So we're mitigating that as well. So it's actually very expensive for us to do, but it's very accurate. So whatever you're doing, it really means something for your biology. You have moved it forward or backwards in a positive or negative way, and it's informative. It's not just a random number that a company made that.
Right. It's not just a wild ass guess or something. It's a bit more than that. And what's sort of your thinking on the frequency with which someone might want to check in on this?
It's really, our recommendation is not before 3 months. So if you're rechecking, you're doing something and you want to recheck, glycans have quite a long half-life. So their half-life is about 3 weeks. So you're always looking at, let's say, the last 6, better if you're looking at the last 12. So after intervention, we say 3 months is the minimum. In research, we may do 1 or 2, but this is research. And even 6 months if it's a gradual change. So if you're doing a lifestyle intervention, which is not as dramatic, you may want to wait 6 months. If you have a very good score to start with, so if you're 10 years or more, or even lower, unless you're doing something, you can do it annually or even less frequent. You're in a good place. Maybe if something changes in your life, you can check in again and see if everything is fine. But if you're doing something, even if you're super healthy and you have a great result, but you're trying out this new diet or fitness
intermittent
routine
fasting
or
or something,
supplements and something else, you want to get that feedback, because what we actually find is our users now are generally healthy, and if they have a poor score, they're doing something wrong. So they're doing something for health, believing this will do them good, and it's actually causing them harm. So you want to reference that what you're investing your time, money, and energy in is actually paying for your longevity, rather than taking away from it with the wrong belief system in a way.
It's a data feedback, and that's important, because that can save you money and just going down the wrong path that's not exactly serving you. So that sounds like a good plan, and something that you want to incorporate, I guess, in your overall planning. Like, we go to the doctor, let's say for a checkup, we'll get a mammogram, let's say every year, so you sort of need to put it in that bucket of, again, how you qualified it, depending on, how far away is your real age from your biological age. I guess that's the response is going to vary a little bit about that. I thought we could go into an area that I know that you're extremely passionate about, and with regards to glycanage in general, and that is the menopause and perimenopause topic. You recently teamed up, I read, with Infinity Healthcare to help women age well. So congratulations. That sounds like a very good partnership. And boy, howdy, does that sound like there's also some progress coming out of a healthcare company to think about this for women? One of the studies that you also reported, and this is I think going to be quite surprising to a lot of people, especially the women that are listening, is that the biggest change associated with glycans that you see is between the age of 45 and 55, when the majority of women enter perimenopause and menopause. So I thought maybe you could share with the listeners just how important this topic is, why you're passionate about educating women, and sort of how you're developing community around this topic as well.
Very important topic. So for whenever we looked at the data and you looked at the different genders, we saw a very strong gender difference with aging in a way that men were very simple. They have a straight line accumulating these bad structures or aging in a linear way and going down in the good ones. Women have a curve. So they go like this, which means that in a way, if you compare them to men, they're doing better in reproductive age. So they have a younger biological age compared to men, or they have a better functioning immune system. And then as soon as, actually way before menopause happens, they start to see changes. And the average change we see when a woman is knocked out on hormones, they age about 9 years. And before, when we looked at the data, we just saw these gender differences, and we assumed it was menopause because that was the sex hormones are why we are men and women. So we thought this is menopause and it's around this age, but we had no proof for it. And when we went to the market 2 years ago, and we worked both with clinics and consumers, and I kept getting these high-profile women. Some of them ran the clinics, and they had much higher results than they would want to have. And
higher meaning the difference in age.
They were higher in biological age than they.
Yes, okay.
And they were maybe the fittest, the perfect, not just the fittest, but they had all of these behaviors and actions towards their health. Everything that they should be doing, they were doing already. So it was quite a shock that they were higher. And then we would ask them, are you maybe in menopause? And they would say, no, I still have a cycle. And that was so frequent. We realized, actually, maybe this is related to hormones before menopause happens. And we started, we got connected to this, to Louise Newson, who runs the largest menopause clinic in Europe, and I think even in the world now, so Newson Health. And that was actually the first time I understood perimenopause. So I was like, oh my God, all of our women that are coming up with these higher results are probably perimenopause, or their hormones are declining already.
And they're still getting their periods, so they're not necessarily cluing in to that this could be connected to a premenopausal hormone drop.
Yes, and then also menopause is such a taboo, so people don't talk about it. You're not really prepared. So I also didn't really, all I knew is that periods stop, but I had no idea about the process, and my mother didn't talk to me about it, and I just saw her go for a very rapid physical change I didn't want to tell her anything about.
Yeah.
So I didn't, and then I realized that menopause is now diagnosed after for 12 months plus 1 day, you haven't had a cycle. But you can spend a decade in perimenopause before that, and you've certainly been in menopause for that last year. And sometimes even you would have a cycle for maybe 6 months, not have a cycle for 6 months, then you have it for a month, and then you can't be in menopause for another year. So, and that's when they get access to treatment as well. It's really, that's when it's prescribed by label. So you can be going through something for 10 years and you're not allowed treatment. And then I really started to look into we also did another study. So we went back to the twins cohort and we asked them for the menopause data, because a lot of the twins went through menopause now. And then when we looked at it, we saw that the rate of glycan aging or infla-aging before menopause is double. So this perimenopause to menopause, women age double the rate that we would usually see. And right now, a lot of them are misdiagnosed, prescribed the wrong drugs as well, because they would go to their GP with symptoms, which you can have 40 different or even more different symptoms, and it can range from palpitations to depression, anxiety, joint pains, and you just get referred to the wrong specialist, and then you put on antidepressants, or the majority of women are put on antidepressants, and they wouldn't know what's going on until that point. And then there's also such a huge stigma and miseducation about the therapy that they really don't have a lot of help. And then you have this huge impact on the economy, where 9 out of 10 say it impacts their work life. 20% quit their job because of symptoms. So it's a huge issue. that I had no idea about.
Massive.
And it was just insane. But it was very interesting for us to see it so strongly in the data. And now we're developing this new diagnostic for perimenopause and menopause where you can identify it early. So when estrogen starts to drop, we already see a difference in women. So some women experience a very big cliff with perimenopause. So within a couple of years, they really drop estrogen dramatically, while others lose it gradually over a long number of years. So we can already have this precision diagnostic approach where we can identify what type of perimenopause is going on. And this is in development, this is early, but we really want to get it as far as the NHS. So eventually it can be a test that's available to every woman. You can know what's going on early and intervene at the right time point with the right type of therapy.
That sounds amazing. And I also have heard that it's not so straightforward just to do a blood test for hormones, that certain hormones, they move throughout the month, and that you need to be aware of these things. And of course, if your doctor's not talking to you about that, and you book your appointment on the 15th of the month, but it would have been better to do it on the 3rd, you might get a dramatically different result and not reflective of what your actual health is. So that's another big issue. And on another podcast, I interviewed a woman by the name of Rochelle Weitzner, and she's big on the topic of menopause economy. And I suppose her company, it's called the Pause Well Aging. They're sort of precision skincare because they're looking at how women's skin changes in menopause, perimenopause, and she's looking at the products that will be specific for those women, which is fantastic. We talked about this Forbes report, which you may have read, again, about this $600 billion economy, but it's a double-edged sword. It could be that you lose productivity in the workplace because of what you've just talked about, or you can address this massive economy and you can gain a huge amount of productivity. You can launch new businesses like yours. I mean, I know you're not a menopause company, but that's one area where, it's 50% of the population. And 1.1 billion women will be in menopause by 2025. So that's a huge market. It's a huge amount of women that you just don't want running around being upset and angry as well. You want to kind of, help them so that everybody's happier. And another statistic that I came across in preparing for speaking with you is that, again, this was a Forbes article, but it was done by a company called Bonafide. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. They're addressing sexual health of women in menopause because there's other physical changes that happen. And they found that 73% of women do not treat their menopause symptoms. And that goes right back to what you're saying, is that this perimenopause isn't showing up at the doctor's offices or in women's minds or in public forums, that this is something happening before your period stops. It's menopause doesn't start on that day in the symptoms category. So this is just such a monstrous topic, and it's
Perimenopause is not defined as a condition yet. It really should be. Key problem is the diagnostics. So and that's why most of the hormone tests are discouraged by NICE guidelines and FDA, because they fluctuate. Every day you're going to have a different result, and maybe this cycle is different to your last cycle, and you never really understand the full picture of what's going on. So the advantage of glycans is they have a long half-life, and this is the balance of the immune system, and this connection with immune system inflammation and hormones. Estrogen is like an anti-inflammatory. It's very direct. You cut off hormones in a woman, you will see this spike up instantaneously. So when when our diagnostics is fully developed, and it'll be like a HbA1c for diabetes. So you had the same problem with diabetes with glucose, where if you're just measuring glucose, it was never really reliable for diagnostics. Well, when you look at the long glucose through HbA1c, you can reliably tell what's going on. And for us, it's the same. You're looking at the long estrogen, so you can tell what's going on over the last couple of months rather than what's going on just in that day. And then the other side, it responds to therapy. So there is a solution. So the extra economy costs and everything is because of the poor management of it. It's not because it exists. And there is this huge stigma around the therapy. I had the stigma when I saw our first paper. I was like, oh my God, can something be good and bad? Can estrogen be helping all of these women, but then causing some kind of risk? And that was wrong. The study that was done that really changed everybody's perception towards estrogen and HRT was just misinterpreted and put into the media before it was properly analyzed. And it is something that you really need to read a lot about until you believe it. Because when something's a popular opinion and everybody talks about it in a certain way, you're like, oh, they must be right. And I mean, the first one I asked my mother, she's a neuroscientist, you know, is estrogen helpful? No, it causes breast cancer. And it doesn't. She's a neuroscientist. She never read the menopause paper. She never looked into the data. She was wrong. Now even she has changed her opinion when she read through the data. So there was this big scandal 20 years ago, the WHI, the Women's Initiative trial, which was the biggest women's health trial ever done. And women were highly under-researched. So this was a very good thing that was happening. But it was an economic crisis at the time. It was a very expensive study. And they did an assumption. So they had all of these studies before, which showed the positive effect of hormones. But these were young women. These were women who were giving hormones when they needed them. So when when menopause was happening, not 10 years later. And the average, and yes, you can still have replacement 10 years later, but the average age of women in the study was 63. So they're all 12 years post-menopause. And they were given this very old form of drug that was made from pregnant horses' urine, which is not the drug that's used today. And then also estrogen didn't have an increased risk. So in women who had a hysterectomy, so they didn't have a womb, and they didn't have this risk of the lining of the womb building up if you don't have progesterone, they had no increased risk of breast cancer. They had no increased risk of the woman who had the progesterone and the estrogen and the synthetic progesterone and the pregnant horse's urine estrogen, they had a slight increased risk, but even when you look at the risk, it wasn't statistically significant. So the risk was 1.26%. So that was a statistical significance is just above this 1%. If you look at smoking and lung cancer, the risk is 27.6%. Yes, smoking causes lung cancer, but estrogen does not cause breast, particularly even the combined estrogen, progesterone, HRT doesn't cause breast cancer, but yes, the synthetic progesterone maybe comes up with a bit more of a risk then, but you don't use these drugs anymore. Now you have the body identical micronized progesterone, the estrogen synthesized from wild yams, and and everybody's now resistant to doing women's health trials because of what this study did 20 years ago. So no one's been looking into it. And now you have all this data coming up of increased rates of Alzheimer's in women because it's a women's disease. And hormones are not really given out, or maybe 10% of women are taking replacement. If you do not take it timely, the estrogen receptors lose their sensitivity. So if you haven't had something for 10 years, of course, it's going to be a bit of a shock to the body. So you can't do it at the dose and the ways they were doing it then. So there's a whole range of fear and misinformation around there, but there is a therapy that manages all of these symptoms. Yes, it has to be personalized. Yes, women experience menopause differently, so they need different types of therapies, different levels of different hormones. So it's not the one size fits all, but it alleviates majority of these symptoms, and we don't have a better alternative. It's like a hormone deficiency. And I think with all of yes, it's nice to have some products for menopause which help some of the symptoms, but they're not really contributing to this long-term health or the health risks of the menopause, because we know that rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, they go up, and plus all of the symptoms you're experiencing, which are not very pleasant, and they're actually all related to inflammation. If you're not addressing the hormone deficiency, and we did a study with hormone replacement with the natural ones, and this is not published yet, but all of them had a very rapid reduction within 3 to 6 months. And even after 6 months, it was very significant. Even after 3 months, it was very significant. We also did another study of diets for menopause. So it was like because there's now so many nutritional plans for menopause, and there was no improvement. All of them kept going up. You cannot out-eat a hormone deficiency, even if you were eating, because also you can't eat that many yams, and you
wow,
God. Daily
I need a mind blown emoji here. I mean, that doesn't mean everybody that's listening, you shouldn't eat well and keep eating your veg. But I guess what Nikolina is telling us is that we might just need other interventions, and we need to be open to that. And it will increase, if it increases the quality of our life and it's done thoughtfully in the care of, physicians who understand that we should consider these things, because we're not gonna, well, who wants to beat yourself up for 10 years, running? And I mean, not that we shouldn't run. I'm just saying, yeah, like you said, you can't out eat the drop in your hormones by the food. And so
and
we need
some forms
the
of
support.
exercise make it worse. So if you're buying into a fitness plan for menopause, it can actually lower your hormones more. So I would think about that twice.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, it sounds like something else I'm going to need to follow up on. Wow. Well, thank you for enlightening us on that entire topic. I did not know most of what you just said. So now we've kind of shared that with hopefully much bigger audience, and the people listening. Please share this podcast with women who are perimenopause, because this could have a hugely positive impact on their lives. So that is really, really important. And I'm grateful that you shared that with us. Let's talk now a little bit about, we've covered a little bit of the economics in a broader sense, the entire kind of opportunity around the menopause economy. I thought we'd talk a little bit about precision medicine, but also kind of more specifically about your company and kind of the opportunity that you have to grow your business. And I wondered kind of what's the insight into your growth plan. You said you're in 40 different countries. Are you mostly looking to go direct to the consumer? Are you working with partners in these different countries? What's your general growth plan look like to kind of continue to expand globally?
It's both B2B and we call it B2B2C. The physician signs up the patient, and both are growing at equal speed most of the time. So we use both of the channels, but when a doctor recommends you something, then it is, and when it comes with and you can prescribe certain things in the clinic that we can't as a consumer company. So our consumer side focuses on lifestyle medicine, or the extra 10, 15 years of quality, healthy life you can get from lifestyle change. And then the physicians can take it a little bit further than that. And there is a lot of new longevity therapies coming out that we're evaluating, and some of them do have a positive impact. So they can quantify that and see if it's actually working. But any space where you're doing something for healthy longevity, and that can be in the gym, or it can be a diet, or it can be a therapy, to quantify that if that's actually taking you closer to that goal or not. Yeah. And you talk about precision medicine. I say even precision health comes before that. And we see this, so we just have a diet study that's going to be published in a month or two. We looked at 1,000 people on 5 different diets, and they're very controlled. So they all got a set of a certain meal and certain nutrient proportions. And in each of these diets, even high carb and low protein, I think, half people benefit, half people have negative changes, significant negative and positive changes. So we're very individual in how we respond to food. Yeah. And this is why you have this huge nutritional debate where everybody's right. Oh, it's paleo, or oh, it's this diet and vegetarian. Yes, maybe for that individual, maybe that really works for that individual, but does not mean it's going to work for somebody else. So it's really about finding this diet that works for you, not just following trends, by seeing if that diet actually works for your biology. Otherwise, you're just blindly following something you heard on social media, probably, or read in a popular book. Yes, well,
that's where we hear about it, right? Oprah, or God knows where. I don't know. Yeah, TikTok. Who knows? I don't get my information from TikTok, but I think a lot of people do.
Yes. And same as with exercise and fasting, you can always overdo something. So that's something
Mm,
that also is not very spoken about enough, but any type of, because fasting, it's all stress. And if you're overdoing it, if you're not able to, and stress can be good. It's this
yeah.
disruption, and we do this a lot in the any type of health or even anti-aging industry. You have the skin industry obsessed with this microneedling now. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's stress on your skin, so you can wake up this natural system to fix yourself and make the skin younger. We work
Yeah.
like that internally as well. So if you exercise, if you fast, if you do a cold plunge, it's stress in the body that wakes up this system we have to fix ourselves, because we're not a machine. We fix ourselves. It's just that this mechanism gets broken with time. So you need to wake it up a little bit. But if you are doing more damage than you can afford to repair, you're just accumulating damage. So we see this a lot with sports. We see this a lot with anything taken to an extreme, even fasting. A lot of people who fast for longevity have a thyroid problem because they've taken it too far and they've slowed down their metabolism to a point that's not healthy. A lot of them are women because we're a little bit more sensitive. And even the way we should exercise, it's a little bit different. We shouldn't be exercising fasted, and men should. So there's lots of differences for all of us. And then also, it's very hard to say men and women, because always the specter of difference within any gender is bigger than the differences between them. So we see this with menopause as well. Some women behave like men. They just follow men's aging track. So there's not clear gender either. But it's very interesting, and it's now being able to quantify it. So we have this simple test you can do at home and quantify if what you're doing is working for you. And I forgot to say the other, when we spoke about price, we do allow these monthly payments. So you can get it for, I think it's £24 a month over a year, which is affordable to anybody. So it's we're making it as approachable as possible. And of course, we're working hard to bring down that cost, but it is costly in the lab at the moment, which is frustrating. Of course. But we will get there.
We interview a lot of cutting edge entrepreneurs, and inevitably, if you're coming out with a very new high-end product or service, the price is always going to start higher, where it's going to be more affordable to the affluent or wealthy. But as the volumes increase and all those things that you're doing, the logistics get smarter, your process gets smarter, the machinery gets smarter, then you can bring those costs down, and of course opens the market up. So I think most people can kind of understand that. That's just part of the process. Yes.
It's different we spend a lot more on phones and clothes.
Yes.
And if we would put health on the same level as we put technology and clothes, I think that would not be, none of these things would be really expensive. It's just sometimes the mindset.
Healthcare costs would drop dramatically. I'm absolutely convinced about that. And I love that you do all these different studies. I love that you're so data driven. I think that's really backs up the science behind the history, of your father's work, that you continue to be data driven, and let's look at this, and let's just not take the headlines that are meant to be sensational, and let's actually dig in and find out, is hormone replacement therapy really bad, or is this really just a small group of women that we need to worry about? I think that's really cool. You said that you put $250,000 into it yourself. Did you take any other money? Have you taken any money, any venture money, or friends and family, or have you bootstrapped this more or less within your own family?
We're bootstrapped. Well, we have angels. We have 4 angels now, and they're also very diverse, but all strategic. We will be fundraising. The first time I tried, despite having a good entrepreneur background, and maybe they couldn't overlook the family side. It does come sometimes, which is a shame, because we're very different in our skill set. And if you look at the backstory, I think it fits in very well. Or if maybe it would have been, I got a lot of no's from so a lot.
That's unbelievable.
I wouldn't be there to say how many. But I've always did my businesses myself. So I also said I said a few no's to what would have been, were good, very good offers, but I just didn't see a match between the fund and what we were trying to do.
Yeah, of course.
So we will raise something next year, or that's the target. And it's really, we are profitable at the moment. So we're not like we break even.
I had that question.
We break even. So we're not,
that's huge though.
Restrained.
That's significant.
We don't have a run rate. A lot of startups have a run rate. We don't have a run rate. Also, we don't have marketing and sales budgets, which is not great. I wish we had some, then we could move a lot quicker than we are now, and we're moving very quickly already. And for us, it's really opening these other market opportunities like menopause. We have other biomarkers which are prognostic of cardiovascular events a decade in advance, or predicting diabetes type 2 7 years in advance. So there is a lot of other biomarkers and technology we're developing, but we're really raising to unlock these market opportunities. And there's some serious hurdles on the glycan diagnostic side, because it's very new. No one's done this before. You have some hurdles that are quite significant, but we can take this route of anyhow, when we even get to the diagnostic side, the healthcare is not ready. If we gave them a test now that told them, they went to your doctor and, you said, oh, doc, I did this test, I'm going to get hypertension in 7 years. He's going to be, yeah, okay, great. Come back in 7 years and I know the drug to prescribe you. But they don't have the system, the education to really help you before then. So even when we get to the diagnostic claims and we can tell somebody you are 7-10 years away from a serious condition, it's going to be a lifestyle change first. So it's going to be your behavior. And that's maybe out of healthcare. I mean, we're working with healthcare as much as we can, but they're even skeptical about peri-menopause. It doesn't kill anybody. Nobody's going to die. So, but you save all these costs if you do it. So there's quite a few hurdles there, but I am very glad that the consumer is more and more open-minded, that there's more and more of this education and more productivity. And I actually don't think the last years have made it better in terms of our current health, but I think it has changed our mindset for our future health in a way that now we value it differently and we're ready to make certain decisions and investments. Yeah,
no, that's all very important. And thank you for telling us the story of the fundraising and profitability or break even. This is part of my financial and investment literacy angle of the podcast, where if people listen long enough to the podcast, or frequently enough, then they're going to get comfortable with the terminology. And I hope that I have, young people listening who may go out and start a business, and they'll be comfortable with this discussion, and as well as women out there who've financially done well, and they might say to themselves, you know what, I put a little bit of money into that company. I had a friend of mine come back to me recently because on another podcast, Rochelle Weitzner said that they had a little bit left open in their raise. And one of my friends said, I would be interested to do that if there's smaller trenches of investment possible. So this for me makes my heart soar, because of course you have to be qualified. It has to be money that it's not going to ruin your life. And there's all the compliance side of it. But I feel like I'm really finally getting into women to say, look, you can approach a company and say, look, I don't have $1 million, but I've got 10 grand. Do you want that? Will you take it? Some will. Some companies will take that. Some won't, of course. But that's the kind of thing I just want women especially to say, just if you like a company and you think you could be a small investor in it and you could be a champion, well, let them know, why not? So I think that's great. And thank you for sharing. All right. So I'm wondering if we should go into doing the test or the rapid fire. How are you doing? How are you doing on time? Do we have?
Let me just have a quick look. I'm okay for another 20 minutes or 15,
okay. Okay, so let's do the rapid fire, and then we'll get that, and then we'll kind of do the test at the end, if that's okay. I think that then it's not kind of split in the middle. Okay. So now we're going to go into the rapid fire, and then we're going to do a test just after that. I gave you a little bit of heads up because sometimes when I interview people, they feel like a deer in the headlights. So I don't want to do that to my guests. What book do you most like to gift other people? that is important to you or you think people should read?
I have a lot of books and I usually give them. So it would be hard for me
It's
to
too many to
choose.
choose.
I can tell you the recent ones or the ones. The one book is called The First Cell. It's an oncologist who's a researcher and a professor. I like this rebel team always, but basically she also went out to try and start a biobank to detect cancer early or monitor her patients, and nobody wanted to fund it. She tried a lot of outreach and only 5% is spent on early detection, so she just did her own. So now she, over the last 40 years, she collected 60,000 samples from 6,000 of her patients, and she has this phenomenal biobank. And her book is very emotionally disturbing because she's criticizing the whole oncology space and the drug discovery space for being so hugely inefficient. She's saying 50 years ago I was treating the patients in the same therapy. Yeah. Your therapies haven't changed for 50 years. You haven't discovered anything, and you've invested this billions into research, and the output is not really adding up. So I think she's phenomenal. Her name is Dr. Azra Raza, and I've given it to all of my more scientific or medically interested
people.
Friends. Yeah. Yes, and one I gave a lot before then was a book that you may like called Let It Go. It's a British entrepreneur. She calls herself Steve, but she's Stephanie. So Dame Stephanie Shirley. She started the first programming and female programmer company. I think it was the 1960s, if I'm not wrong, maybe even before then. And built it into $1 billion or $8 billion company over a decade or two. But her
how have I not heard
amazing.
About her?
She has a fantastic TED Talk. I would put her into Google and listen to that first.
Okay,
and
I can link that to the podcast.
A fantastic story. She was one of the Jewish immigrants that were put on that hindered transfer train to Britain. And has this fantastic story behind that. If I look at role models, ever since I've known about her, she is the number one. And yeah, anyway.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Thank you for telling us about that. I've not heard about her, so that's wonderful. Yeah. I love both of those suggestions. What was the best 100 pounds or less that you spent on yourself in the last year that was really valuable to you?
Oh, it may be a bit biased because I know the founder and I was in the first trial, but it's a skin company called OneSkin.
Okay.
And I met her before they launched. There are 5 women with a PhD who spent 5 years researching 1,000 different peptides until they found one which reversed biological aging of the skin. And it works. That was in the first trial. I tried I don't think they sent to UK. But maybe you can nudge her a little bit, and she sends to me. I shouldn't say this, but yes, I think you may be able to nudge her a little bit.
I will.
It's about
I'm very persistent.
There's a 20% discount if you and I pay for them, and not just that I pay for them for all of my friends because it's like the nicest gift I can give them, and it's really like the only cream I've used so many products, and I have this. Dry and oily skin, really weird, but this really it works. My skin, it never felt better, and it's within for me a week, and I think maybe going into 40s, 50s, it takes a bit longer. That's the feedback I've got from friends. But it actually works, and it's not one of those anti-aging skin scams, which is products. This is actually real science and 5 years of sweat, blood, and tears to get to something that.
What a great little tip!
Validated,
Where are they based? In the UK.
San Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco. Okay, okay. And they're called OneSkin.
OneSkin, yes.
And they're now going to market, or are they still kind of?
They're on the market for the last year and something.
Okay.
So, well, no, they're not. They only, I think, states maybe Canada is their market.
Okay.
And I think they're fundraising now as well, so that's a good tip.
Good.
But their product is addictive. So anybody gave it to, they get addicted to it because it works like magic. So and you can find all these amazing feedback from their customers.
Cool. Ooh. Well, I'm very curious. Thank you for sharing. Look at all the good information we're getting, shot callers. Okay, just a quick one. Do you have any morning routine? Like anything that's really helps you mentally prepare for the day?
Not a particular one, apart from I get really good sleep. That's one thing I don't try not to compromise on. I can compromise on a lot, but I don't compromise on sleep. And then I take about 20 minutes to drink my coffee in silence and think. And that's a little bit of a creation. And there's a bit of a creation, like we don't go for a coffee, we go on a coffee, which means sit and look at the beach, hopefully, or whatever your environment is, for an hour, sipping coffee very slowly. So I take it down to 20 minutes. I enjoy it, but it sets my mind, or it starts my morning with calm.
Yes.
And that helps because usually the day is healthy and hectic.
Yes.
And it sets it a bit.
That sounds very sensible and inspirational. Do you have any New Year's resolutions that you've thought about?
Actually, no. I mean, I think I'm going to have same as everybody else. The health goals of next year. And I think I can make one now. And that's spending less time on screen. Yes. I think I spend about 12 hours or so, at least 7 just on screen. Yeah. On a Zoom call. Yeah. And the rest on email. So I really need to take this down because I can even see the impact on my eyes. I've never been short-sighted. Now I'm severely short-sighted. So I think I need to give my eye muscles a bit of practice and do a little bit more outside of the screen. And of course, it's normal in a early company you work long hours. But working long hours on the screen is just a nightmare.
It's not sustainable, is the bottom line, right? So we have to constantly look for other ways to balance that out. Okay, what is your definition of a wealthy life?
It's health and being able to do what you love without worrying about money. So that I think those 2 things are everything for me, because you can have all the money in the world if you don't have your health. And looking at all the young entrepreneurs, actors, everybody who's lost their life recently, I'm very certain that some of that is the way they work and how they spent themselves in those couple incredibly productive decades they had. But I really think that there's a better balance, and you can do both and keep your health and do amazing things at the same time. And then being able to do what you love without this financial strain is the ultimate version of freedom for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's ultimately about freedom. And I've heard this from a friend of mine, but I've read it as well. Something like after $70,000 a year, of course, if you're living in Manhattan or, a very, very expensive city, that's not the case. But for most of the Western world, everything above that is just, extra. So
I had this before. I got to a point that my businesses were doing so well that after that, like a little bit above, it was just, I was bored. Yeah. Like no matter whatever inspiration there was at the beginning of building something that was very good financially, it just didn't make me happy in terms of what I was actually spending my time in day in, day out. Yes. So I think it's really important that even if you can, just do the things that inspire you from day one, because you will get to a point that when you're comfortable, that's you may really dislike what you're doing, or you may not be inspired with it anymore.
And if you have the habit already throughout your life of making sure that you're doing things that you enjoy now versus one day when I have this amount of money, I'll do this. If you're sort of living honestly to yourself throughout time, you're probably much more likely to walk away from the big money if you're aware it's causing you anguish and you're giving up the things that you love.
not even that. You have people who can't just work for money. And I think that comes a lot from my mother, but it just doesn't fulfill me. You can have a very successful business, I don't know, selling ads or, doing something, property or whatever it is, but if it's just if that was just if it's not impact, so you're not actually improving significantly, you're saving somebody's life for me, I think that is really your work should have a impact, as your podcast is, on sustainability, longevity, all these other things that inspire us way beyond just money.
We are very aligned on that topic. And for someone who's spent her life in banking, it's somewhat ironic that I'm really not driven by trying to make as much money as I can. In fact, I probably should have been over the course of my life focused more on that. But I do feel that I'm here for a different purpose, and so we're very aligned on that. Well, before we do this little test, I want to say thank you so much for coming and spending time with us, really illuminating us on some fantastic insight and sort of inspiration about our own health, women's health, and general health for everybody. So that I feel very grateful that you've given us such insight. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, and I wish Glycanage all the best, and you will let us know once you get your fundraising rolling. Well,
I will do.
Keep the Wealth Alchemist up to date, so I can share with whomever I think I should share it with. All right, so people, I'm opening this for the first time. Got a special number on there, so I guess they can track it. How exciting. Is this the first podcast trial?
He's done it? Yes, absolutely. I did it on Zoom before, but not on a podcast.
Okay, but you can guide me through. Here's blood collection card. Do I need to take more than? Oh, okay. So there's 4.
They're just so you need 4 drops of blood, and
4 drops of blood. Okay.
Good drops. So let them.
Good
fall.
drops.
Don't
let them
touch
fall.
the paper, because if you touch it, you can contaminate a bit. And
sure.
We know when it's contaminated, but try not.
Okay. Okay. So this is. Do I need one of these or more than one?
It depends on how good it goes. Sometimes
how good I am at pricking myself.
Yes. So don't be scared. Really push it in, because then you're going to get probably one of these, and 4 drops is fine. But if you need more blood, you have extra ones as well. I
see. Okay. So should I just twist this off here?
Yes. You can take one of the alcohol wipes first and just wipe the finger you want to prick. And prepare the plaster so that you can wrap it up in case there's a lot of blood. You want to wrap it up quickly.
So I don't want to bleed all over my microphone.
Particularly if you have something white close by.
Okay, good. Okay, I've got my clean wipes here. And I thought when we go to publish the podcast, probably middle January or so, I will then have, possibly the results back. So we can talk. If I'm willing to share them. if I'm not actually 80. Okay, so I've done this. Twist this off.
Twist it off, yes. Pick a finger.
And then pick a finger.
Yep.
Yep. And then just give it a good.
So hold it and just press it a bit more. So press it until you see a prick, and it's going to hurt a little bit. So I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Get pricked. Okay. And then kind of squeeze.
Yes. Sometimes if you squeeze it too much, you're going to speed up a lot. Let me see if it works.
Can you see? Oh, where's my...
Yeah, you probably you can squeeze a little bit. Don't squeeze it.
Okay.
And even better if you try the hand here a little bit, because if you squeeze it too much, you're gonna speed up clotting. And even if you wipe it a little bit, you're gonna get rid of it. So you can do that if it doesn't drop in a minute.
Okay, so if it doesn't drop, then I should do another finger.
Do another finger, or you can even try to wipe. Oh, it's going to be fine. You're gonna get 1 drop from that for sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Did it hurt?
No, not too bad. I mean, it's a little prick, but nothing too bad. Come on. Can I touch the thing or no? It's got to drop.
The blood drop can touch it, but not the finger.
Can I? Yeah, okay. So just to kind of get it. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, it
How's
would
that
be
look?
better if it's a bit bigger. So wait for another drop
Bigger.
and maybe, yeah, it should be like a little, you have it in the instructions there, like a little photo of what's good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I normally would read this, but since we're doing it, should I just...
Yeah, and it's very simple, so...
Should I try another finger or just let that one go? Keep going.
If you wipe it, you may get some more blood. So wipe it and see if you get more blood.
Okay.
Squeeze it a bit. Any luck?
Yeah. Thumb's coming.
Yeah, still quite.
There we go.
Good. You can get another one.
I'm trying to... Gotta be careful not to touch anything here.
Yeah. And if you stand up, sometimes it's easier for blood flow. Or if you just come out of a hot shower.
Ah, okay.
And you can drink some beetroot juice.
Oh, okay.
That speeds up.
Okay.
Well.
Okay, so I've got this one, and then so I should do another finger now. You think?
Yep. Do another
so
one.
I'm going to put my plaster on, all ready to go. Oops. Good. Okay. My second clean wipe here. I'm trying to do this quickly for you. I know you have to get going. Okay, I'm cleaning my finger, people. Or should I do my thumb? Which bleeds more?
Sometimes if you have thick skin, then this one or this one. Maybe this one.
Okay. This one. This one.
Yep, that one. Yes.
Or
yeah, that
one.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe go for the little one because you have the ring there. I don't know if the ring is tight or not.
Ah, the little one. Okay, this one. Go for the pinky finger. Okay. Pinky. Got my thing ready.
Have you done many blood tests at home before?
I have not, but I also, speaking of peptides, I really want to try and get some peptides that I've read about and inject myself. I'm very curious. So I'm like I said, I'm a budding biohacker. I'm open to it, but of course it's a little, there's some kind of, kind of anxiousness, but it's not that bad. I know it's not that bad. Okay, so we're gonna do it again, kind of on the fat bit, and now I've got my left hand.
Press it
hard. Okay. Oh, that looks good.
Good.
Yeah, look at that. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That looks
So
pretty
good.
Oh, yeah.
For a drop. If you let it drop, then you get a better drop of blood.
Oh, okay. I'm going to let it drop. Well, it takes its time, huh?
Yeah.
Is that normal?
It's normal. It's completely normal. That's why we have the free needles there.
Yeah. Oh, but that's a big one.
That's a good one. Then you won't need an extra one on that.
You don't think I need a fourth one?
Oh, you do need to fill all four, but the first one.
Oh, there we go.
One more. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So should I wipe it now?
Good. No, leave it. I think it's going well.
Okay. Yeah. So the pinky finger was better.
So we're just working on these little devices that you put in your skin, and then it draws blood through the skin. We don't know if they're going to work for us yet, but that will be a nice solution and that will take some time. But
yeah, great. I was going to ask you while we're waiting for my blood to drop. Can you those glucose monitors you can put on your arm for 14 days sort of thing?
Yeah.
Could you envision some sort of monitor where that would monitor? You'd wear it for 14 days, and it could monitor the things that you want to look at. Is that something that one day?
One day. Now it's more complicated than genetic analysis. So
okay,
we will need some time to get there. I mean, that's particularly for the menopause thing. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be. But it is a little we will get there slowly.
All right. Okay, come on. You're almost there. What is it waiting for? Shall I touch it or no, let it drop?
Let it drop if you can, because I would actually add another drop to the first card you had.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
a little small.
Okay. I can do that after you're off.
Yeah.
Come on, little guy. All right.
Just one more on the first drop, and try to add it next to it so they don't go over each other, but they're next to each other.
Next to each other. Okay. What can I do to make it go?
You can touch it, but don't touch the finger.
Just like sitting there. Oh, it's really gooey. It didn't. All right. I can carry on without
You're going to need one more finger.
I'm going to need one more finger. Okay.
Yeah, some days you get really lucky and you got way too much blood, and some days you need a few fingers.
Okay, so I'll do another drop next to both of those, and then I'll send that in. So, this was exciting. What?
Leave it to dry for an hour and a half, because when it dries, it stabilizes, and then put it in the plastic bag and just in the envelope and in any post box, any of those.
Yeah.
If you're in Zurich?
I'm in Zurich, yeah.
So you would need to we don't have prepaid postage for Zurich.
Yeah.
You would need to go to a post office and then ship it to us.
No problem. No problem. Cool. Thank you so much. I'm excited for the results from the test and to publish in January. And I'm going to wish you a happy holiday and a happy new year. And we'll be in touch in the new year as well. But thank you so much for your time, Nikolina, and all the best to you and Glycanage.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.